Welcome back, spicy food fans. This is Mike from Wicked Cactus Sauce in the 2013 Feast Your Eyes on This Spicy Cooking Challenge. For our final round, I hope everybody has their passport ready because we're going to be doing some globetrotting as we explore international cuisine and fusion flavors. For the first stop on our world tour, I'll be taking the American soul food classic of Chicken and Waffles to France to meet up with the French classic of Salad Lyonnaise. A savory herbed waffle with the bacon cooked right into it is going to be plated with a salad of baby lettuce, mustard vinaigrette, fried chicken tenders, and a poached egg perched right on top. From France, we're going to be heading down to the Mediterranean to pick up some more culinary influences that we will then take over to India for a Tandoori Lamb Pizza with mint cilantro chutney and feta cheese. From India, it's a hop, skip, and a jump over to China, where we'll be picking up some more influences to bring all the way back home, where we're going to make over that all-American classic of apple pie as apple pie egg rolls that we'll serve with a salted, spicy caramel sauce. So make sure your seat backs are up and your trays are in the upright, locked position. It's time to get cooking. For my chicken and waffles meets salad lyonnaise, I'm going to first start with a savory herbed waffle. We're going to bake the bacon right into that, and it's going to take the place of the crouton in the traditional salad lyonnaise. To start off our savory waffle, I'm going to use 1½ cup of flour, 1/4 cup of cornmeal, 4 slices of finely chopped pre-cooked bacon, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, that'll allow our waffles to rise, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of chipotle pepper, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. I'm going to get this nice and incorporated and then add in our wet ingredients. Now for those wet ingredients, there's 3 beaten eggs, 4 tablespoons of melted butter. We're going to save a little bit of that to grease the waffle iron. 1½ cups of milk. And then our fresh herbs. We're going to do 1 teaspoon of chive, 1 teaspoon of thyme, and 1 teaspoon of parsley, finely minced. I'm going to mix together the wet ingredients, then add them to our dry ingredients, and beat that batter until it's smooth. In the meantime, the waffle iron has been heated, and I've gone ahead and greased it with a little bit of our melted butter. And then I'll just use 1/3 of a cup of our batter in each waffle iron. I'll cook the waffles until I no longer see steam coming from the waffle iron, at which point they should be golden brown and cooked throughout. I'll get started on the breading for my chicken tenders. There's 1/3 cup flour, 1/4 cup cornmeal, 1/4 cup cornstarch, 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of granulated garlic, 1 teaspoon of fresh thyme, 1 teaspoon of chipotle pepper, and then 1/2 teaspoon of ground super hots. That's chocolate buchalokia and 7-pot Jonah. That'll add a nice kick. I've seasoned my chicken tenders with salt and pepper, and then I'm going to run them through an egg white wash and into the batter. Meanwhile, on the stove, I have some vegetable oil in a Dutch oven that I brought to 375 degrees, and I'm going to cook these in small batches until they're golden brown and cooked throughout. To really represent the salad lyonnaise, we're going to need to have a poached egg on top of our chicken and waffles. So in order to do that, we're going to use a little bit of vinegar in our poaching water. This will help those egg whites hang together and make a beautiful poached egg for us. To make our poached egg, I have a couple of inches of water in my skillet with a couple of tablespoons of white vinegar. And I'm using a custard cup to pour my eggs in. I want them to stay nice and tightly packed. I don't want the whites to spread out. I'm going to set up 4 eggs in my pan and then put a cover on it, move them from the heat, and let them cook in the residual carryover heat in that water for a couple of minutes. And I want them nice and runny, so I'm only going to give them 3 or 4 minutes or so. After my 3 or 4 minutes has gone by, I'm going to use a slotted spoon to remove them and put them into a cold water bath to help stop any additional cooking. To make up the vinaigrette for my salad, I'm using 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. I like apple cider as it has a nice mild flavor, a little bit of underlying sweetness. I'm also using about 1/4 cup of Dijon mustard. As a nod to our waffle, I'm going to sweeten it with a little bit of maple syrup, just a drop or two. 1 finely chopped shallot,
And then some of those same herbs that we used in the waffle batter. That's about 1 teaspoon each of chive, thyme, and fresh parsley, nice and finely chopped. A couple of pinches of black pepper and a couple of pinches of salt will finish off our dressing. Give that a nice mix. I've tossed some baby lettuce in the vinaigrette and it's time to plate. The flavors in this dish, in that waffle batter, the smokiness from the bacon and chipotle, those fresh herbs that we're picking up again in the vinaigrette, the maple and mustard go really well together. The crispy cornmeal crust and super hot peppers of those chicken fingers really set the stage for the poached egg. So when you crack that poached egg, that runny yolk goes soaking through those greens and that waffle. It is fantastic.
Indian food is all about spices, so in order to get my lamb marinade, I'm going to be making a little bit of this. This is garam masala. This is a prepackaged mix. It's a pretty good one. We'll be using some of this later, but I want to really make the flavors on my lamb pop, so we're going to make some fresh using basically everything I've got in my spice cabinet.
My lamb marinade starts with 1 cup of yogurt and 1/4 cup of lime. I have some dried spices that I toasted. There is 1/2 teaspoon of mustard, 2 teaspoons of coriander, 1/4 teaspoon clove, and 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. There's 1/2 teaspoon of habanero, 1/4 teaspoon of fenugreek, 1 teaspoon of cumin, 2 teaspoons here of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of cardamom, 1 teaspoon of turmeric, the zest of 1 whole lime, 3 finely minced garlic cloves, 1 tablespoon of ginger, and 2 tablespoons of hot paprika. Give that a nice mix. I'm using a boneless leg of lamb that's about 3.5 pounds. I've trimmed it of any silver skin, gristle, and big chunks of fat. I'm going to go ahead and run it through my marinade, making sure to get it thoroughly seasoned inside and out. And then I'll put it in my zip-top bag and let it marinate for anywhere between 12 and 16 hours. I'm going to go ahead and truss it and put it in a 400-degree oven. I'm going to put it in the middle position with the baking rack underneath to catch any juices. And I've got my meat probe in there to make sure that I get this to a rare temperature, which is going to be about 135 degrees. While my lamb cooks, I'll get started on my mint cilantro chutney. I have here 1/2 cup of yogurt. To that I'm adding 3/4 cup of coconut milk, 2 cloves of garlic, 3 serrano peppers, 1 tablespoon of garam masala, 1 teaspoon of pepper, a pinch of salt, 1 1/2 cup of mint leaves, 2 cups of cilantro leaves, and about 1/4 cup or so of honey. Now I'll let this blend. Once it's all nice and liquefied, I'll taste it and adjust for seasoning. Maybe a little more sweetness, maybe a little more heat. To get started with the pizza dough, I'm going to use 1 1/4 cup of lukewarm water, to which I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of honey. This is where I'm going to proof my yeast. So I have 1 envelope of active dry yeast. I'll get that nice and mixed in, and we'll make sure that that starts foaming up. It'll take about 5 minutes or so. In my bowl, I have 4 cups of all-purpose flour, and to that I'm adding about a teaspoon worth of salt. We're going to get this mixed together. This will be enough dough for 2 large pizzas. Our yeast is proofed, so it's time to start making up the dough. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil to my flour and my proofed yeast. Get this nice and incorporated, and then I'll knead this out on the board with a little bit of flour for about 8 minutes until it's nice and elastic. I've finished kneading my dough, and I'm going to put it back in the bowl with a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to roll it around so that it doesn't dry out. And then I'll cover that with a towel and allow it to rise, and it'll take about a half hour or so. Meanwhile, my lamb has come up to temperature in the oven, so it's time to take that out. I'm going to go ahead and take the lamb out, tin it with foil, and allow it to rest for about a half hour or so before slicing. And then I'm going to slice it up into nice bite-sized pieces that we can put on our pizza. I've taken half of the dough and stretched it out to meet my pizza pan size, which is about 12 inches. I've given it a light greasing with a little bit of olive oil, and I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of our mint cilantro chutney. This mint cilantro chutney has a nice refreshing herbaceousness to it, a little bit of bite from the raw garlic, and a little bit of heat from those serrano peppers. I'm also going to add some of the marinade that we use for our lamb. Now, you cannot add marinade that has had raw meat into it to any cooked product. So while we were resting our lamb and waiting for the dough to rise, I put this in a saucepan and brought it up to a gentle simmer for 15 minutes to kill off any bacteria that may be in there. There's a lot of great flavor in that marinade, and it didn't make any sense to throw it right down the drain. I'm shredding up our rare lamb into bite-sized pieces. It is fantastic, tender, a little bit of gaminess to it, those Indian spices really shining through. And then, of course, we're going to add some feta cheese to top off the pizza. This won't melt like mozzarella, but it will brown up and add a delightful saltiness to our pie. It's been about 16 minutes for my pizza, and it is looking mighty fine. Nice golden crust. Cheese is starting to brown. Oh yeah, Tandoori Lamb Pizza. For my apple pie egg rolls, I really want to make sure our Asian flavors come through. So I'm going to be adding in some Szechuan peppercorns, and instead of using straight cinnamon, I'm going to be substituting cinnamon and Chinese 5-spice. For the apple pie filling, I have 1 tablespoon of melted butter, 1/4 teaspoon of Szechuan peppercorn, 1/4 teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice, 1 cup of brown sugar, and 2 cups of diced apples. I'm using Granny Smith and Pink Lady, a nice blend of tart and sweet. We'll let these soften on the stove top, and then we'll put them in the refrigerator to cool so we can work with them. To start my spicy salted caramel sauce, I will melt down 2 cups of sugar over medium-high heat until it reaches 350 degrees. Then I'm going to add 12 tablespoons of room temperature butter cut into chunks. And when you add that butter, it is going to foam up, so be prepared. Once that butter is fully incorporated, I'm going to go ahead and add in 1 cup of room temperature heavy cream. And we should see a nice foam on this as well. We'll get that fully incorporated off of the heat. And then we'll go ahead and add our seasonings. That's 1 tablespoon of kosher salt and 1 teaspoon of ground yellow Buchalokia peppers. To finish off my egg rolls, I'm taking an egg roll wrapper and adding 2 tablespoons of my apple pie filling. I'll bring the corners of that egg roll wrapper in nice and tight, and then using a bit of beaten egg, seal up those exposed edges while I roll up the egg roll as tightly as I can. I'm going to fry these in 375-degree oil for just a few minutes on each side until they're nice and golden brown, and we'll plate it with a little bit of our sauce and some French vanilla ice cream.
Well, there it is, folks. Finally, the end of the 2013 Feast Your Eyes on This Spicy Cooking Challenge. I hope everybody had as much fun watching these videos as I did making them. This global world tour has me tuckered out. From the Chicken and Waffles meets Salad Lyonnaise, the Tandoori Lamb Pizza, and of course, those apple pie egg rolls with the spicy caramel dipping sauce. I'm feeling a little jet lagged, so I'm gonna have a couple slices of pizza, then I'm gonna start tackling this mess. Everybody else, you guys stay spicy.